Hello and welcome to the IT News Podcast. I'm your host, Eleanor Dickinson. Joining me today is Brett Wilson, the former CIO of the Australian Red Cross. In today's episode, Brett talks about Red Cross's pivot to a data mesh approach using Microsoft Fabric, as well as gives a deep dive into the not-for-profit's multi-year technology transformation. This was one of a series of podcasts recorded during the IT News Benchmark Awards in March. Since then, Brett has joined the Royal Australasian College of Physicians as its CIO. But for now, let's hear about Red Cross.
Brett, you've been in the role now for years. Why don't you just take us back a little bit and tell us, what was the state of the IT at Red Cross when you first joined?
Yeah, really interesting journey we've been on. When I first started, I was brought on to sort of initiate change. How do we change a 110-year-old organisation to work in the digital world that we work in at the moment? 89% shadow IT, so we had a huge amount of technology out in the business, which was unmanaged. A lot of security challenges as well that obviously we've overcome, but also probably a culture of an organisation where we didn't really look at data and some of the other elements around emerging technologies to see how we could move forward.
When you first approached Australian Red Cross, what were some of the things you had to do to get rid of the shadow IT, have a unified culture, and build an architecture that was sustainable?
So when I first started, it was a very inward-focused team. As I said, it's 89% shadow IT. And what that meant was we didn't really understand what we had out in the technology landscape. So we had one of our partners come in and actually do some work for us and really uncover, I think it was about 250 applications across the organisation. So it was about initially, how do we find out what we've got? So 250 applications, a lot of risk associated with that. And then what do we actually do with that beyond that? So we were then looking at, well, what do we need to do as an organisation? Where do we want to move to in the next 5 to 10 years? And one, do we have the funding to obviously transform the organisation as well? And so we looked at it from a platform approach. And so went down the Dynamics 365 piece where we could use the platform to do finance, marketing automation, and obviously the enterprise data platform as well. So that's where we sort of ended up. That was the remit of coming on board. But also at the same time, we did an operating model change and an org structure change as well across the whole org. So we had 3 different streams running at the same time.
What were some of the challenges that you encountered in bringing that platform approach to an organisation that, as you said, was quite, maybe not disorganised, but everybody was doing their own thing?
The change is one of the hardest things. And I think within Red Cross, it was one of those more difficult things because we'd been running as almost a state-based organisation for a number of years. And they had a national structure in, but I think the states were still doing a lot of their own thing. And it was about bringing the governance structure in, so making sure that they understood the why and what they were going to get out of it. We're going down this platform approach, and it's going to be better for you because you'll have better access to the data associated with it across all systems as well.
Why don't you just outline for us what are the key pillars then that underpin your strategy today in 2025?
So we're about 6 months into the current strategy. The 3 pillars or the 3 guiding principles are around simplify, adopt, and embed. So the simplify element is really making sure that we simplify our architecture. So how do we make it less complex? How do we make it easy to use? The embed piece is about embedding technology into everything we do. So how do we look at process improvements? How do we make sure that we look into the future, what's emerging technology, and making sure we do think about technology as an enabler? And the adopt piece is how do we adopt what we've actually put in place and how do we build on that and optimize that as well?
I understand that during your transformation process, Red Cross delivered a digital spine and 6 core platforms. I just wanted to get a little bit more detail about the 6 core platforms that you rolled out. And maybe if you could describe for the audience who aren't familiar with your story, what the digital spine is and what it means to Red Cross.
So the digital spine is really, it's that core neural network that runs our organization. And the platforms that were in it were finance. So finance obviously is our ability to look at where we spend money, but also look at how we bring money in. The second piece is around CRM. So we've got donors and members within that space. So donors obviously provide us with a channel for funding, but also members are part of our organization and they are a really intrinsic part of our organization as well. But then we have marketing automation, which those three are actually the ones on Dynamics 365. And the marketing automation piece is giving us the ability then to bring the data into one location, start personalizing those emails and other sort of aspects of communication as well. But the other 2, one of them was a customer data platform, which was built on Optimizely, which it's about stitching data together from different sources, from social and people surfing on the website, and it gives us that single view of the customer. And the last one is as I mentioned, is around that enterprise data platform, but we also did enterprise risk platform as well. So it was about de-risking or providing more visibility at a risk level across the organization and bringing that up into a single platform away from spreadsheets.
And now that you've got this all set up, what is the process you're taking to optimize it and make the most of the technology you have in place?
Yeah, great question. It's about focusing on what really makes a difference in the organization. So at the moment, obviously, we're seeing a bit of a decline in funding. So the focus is really around how do we improve that funding pipeline? How do we support that funding pipeline? How do we make CRM more engaging, one for external donors, but also internally? How do we make sure we can segment up specific areas to be able to then communicate and market to them a lot more effectively than we previously could? And that hyper-personalization is one of those key pieces at the moment, where instead of just being an email blast out, it's personalized to the person who it's going to with content that's related to them as well.
Earlier this year, I heard you speak at Gartner about TED, which is an internal large language model you were developing at Red Cross. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that's progressed since then?
So TED is now Ask TED, and it's named after our trauma teddies. And the trauma teddies are given to kids in the event of some sort of trauma, an emergency or a disaster. So that's the only way you can actually receive one of these. So Ask TED is an internal support bot, not just a chat bot that sits inside Teams. And what it gives us is, one, the ability to respond to questions. So simple questions such as, can you tell me what tickets I've got open, or can you tell me where this contact is or this file is? But on the second level down, which is more activity-based, it gives us the ability to do something as well. So if an end user asks, can I be added to this distribution list or to this software group? If it doesn't require any approval, it will then actually add them to the group, and then obviously the ticket's closed. Whereas if it does require approval, it'll go and find who it actually needs to get the approval from, get the approval via Teams or email. And once that we have that sort of audit history, then it will apply the software or whatever it is as well. What we're estimating, though, is over the period of time, sort of next 3 years, there's about 1.3 million hours of time waiting for the service desk to normally get back to you. So what that means is now we don't have end users waiting, which could mean 2 or 3 days. It's almost instantaneous in the support they're getting as well. So it's uplifted support, but it's significantly reduced the waiting time of end users as well.
That's incredible. And I understand that's one of several use cases that you're working on currently.
We have an arm of Red Cross called Humanitech, and they're doing some work with Cara Technologies, which is Auslan, so sign language, so converting emergency services messages into Auslan. One of the other areas as well as we've just finished is the Azure AI translation tool, where we've translated a number of files that we record from our migrant support team. Previously, it would take 14 days to come back, and we'd have to do it in batches, whereas now we can drop in an audio file. It translates that from 67 languages back into English, and then it takes about 45 minutes. So it's a significant time saving, but also what it means is we can build on that, and we've actually shared it out to 20 of the other national societies across the globe.
Are you able to talk about Red Cross Australia's move to mesh using Microsoft Fabric?
So early days for us, we had a bit of a false start during transformation, where we rolled out Purview and a data lake. And then obviously Fabric came in, so we paused that process. We'd done a couple of ingestions of finance data, which was obviously giving us some great insight, but obviously shifting to Fabric technology now, and we're in the final stages of that delivery, and then we'll start ingesting different data sets. What we're hoping to get out of it is similar to what I mentioned before, which was how do we combine different data sets from different sources and look at data in a different way that we may not have previously looked at. We stood up a data governance function the start of 2024, and we recognized that across the organization, there was a lot of data, and we were bringing this data into one location. What we were seeing, though, is the quality of that data and understanding around retention periods of the data and privacy and the other elements weren't really well thought of. We stood up a data governance function, and it was really about bringing the functions of the business into one area and making sure that they understood that they are accountable for the quality of data. So if we make a change over here, how does it affect the other areas within the organization? And then at a top level, we had a steering committee, and it was really looking, how could we use data more effectively? How could we help it make us decisions? But also if we looked at a data set from external, maybe from the government, and one of our internal data sets, and we joined them together, could that give us more predictability, or could that give us something that we don't normally potentially have?
What do you see as being the next steps on the journey for Red Cross looking ahead for the rest of the year?
So focus for us at the moment is we have a second phase of delivery for our HR system. So payroll and workforce planning. So two very important pieces. One, so we can pay staff. The second one is workforce planning. So it's across our retail stores, as well as our staff, as well as our volunteers. So it gives us the ability, that top-down approach, to look at where our individual resources are with the skills, obviously, that we need to deploy, say, for an evacuation, or to run our retail stores as well. So that's one of the initiatives. The other one is really focusing around quality data, cleaning up the data, and making sure we end up with some data that we can make decisions from, and we're confident that we can make decisions from it. And probably the third part is optimization across that whole marketing technology stack to make sure that we engage better with our funders and our donors as well. And we're bringing in, obviously, as much data as we can to make those decisions.
I think people forget sometimes that NFP, you do have to actually run it like a business. You do have to think of money coming in, money coming out. Funding, obviously, is an issue across the NFP sector. So how does that inform the way you approach technology investment, architecture, making sure you're getting that maximum ROI, essentially, that efficiency?
Great question. I think we do run it a bit as a business. So there's the difference is we are for purpose rather than for profit. So we still have to actually make money to spend money as well. And we're quite mindful around what we do spend on. So we can't sink $1 million into an AI project that's not going to produce any benefit. I think the key thing for us is let's articulate the problem statement and the benefits up front. And then we look at 5 things that might be potentially competitively or competing against other end funding. And then we make a decision around which one is going to give us the most amount of benefit, whether it's long-term or medium-term, or whether there's something short-term in there as well. But we rank certain things based on whether they're going to produce funding, whether they're aligned to strategy, and several other components as well.
And I understand as well that you are also using Microsoft's not-for-profit function. How does that help your outcomes?
So you're talking about the fundraising and engagement accelerator that sits on top of Dynamics 365. What it gives us is out of the box. It gives us a lot of capability that we would normally have to build. So the ability around donor transactions and obviously workflows associated with that. And so if we didn't have it, we would have to build these, and then we would have to keep managing it as well. The benefit about it actually being provided by Microsoft is it's an ongoing piece of technology, and obviously there's significant enhancements that we don't have to actually apply for or pay for as well. And so it ends up with a community a community crowdsourcing type of engagement where all of the NFPs that are using it come up with these great ideas and it gets incorporated into the platform.
We've already discussed your generative AI strategy. What else is on the pipeline for you and for Red Cross?
I think we're seeing now, we're sort of in one of those greatest humanitarian impacts across the world that we've actually ever seen. We've seen conflicts that have been lasting for the last 50 years. We're also seeing climate change. We're seeing more weather systems. So, for example, cyclones recently up in Queensland and New South Wales. And so what we're seeing is the shift from where we were sort of had an off-season and on-season to always on. And I think for Red Cross, it's about how do we make sure that we react to the external environment and we continue to change, but we focus on the impact that we're actually going to provide out in the community.
Okay. Last but not least, I'd love to just hear for our listeners who are looking to go into not-for-profit or just to accelerate their own technology leadership career, what advice would you give to them?
Within not-for-profit space, it's connected to purpose. And it means that you can look back and look out in the community and think, wow, I've done an amazing job. My advice would be you've got to appease 2 people, your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self. So if it's appeasing both of those and it feels like it's a positive impact, then obviously I would go ahead and do it. The only other piece of advice that I'd probably give you is it's about being authentic. So if you're your authentic self all the time, then you'll be really successful. What you don't want to be able to do is you have a totally different personality from home to work, because obviously what that means is then you've got to sit there and adjust between the two.
Brett, this has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
Thanks for having me.